Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gotama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, and we're studying the words of the Buddha. We're in Volume 5, which is titled The First Stage of Enlightenment, Stream Enterer. We're going to be exploring chapters 21 through 30 today. What we do in this program is I invite students who are in Zoom to be able to volunteer to read a chapter, and then I'll share some teachings on that, and then I'm going to open up to any and all questions that you have. Whether you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can ask questions by putting that into the comment section, or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like. This program works really well for those people that already have a foundation in the teachings of the Buddha and are maybe even reading the chapters before class and or after class, because you've got the words of the Buddha, you've got a reference that takes you back to the Pali Canon, and you've got words from me that are helping you understand how to integrate the teaching into your life and get the most results out of what it is that the Buddha is teaching. So I'd like to welcome all of you, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly, and I'll invite anybody in Zoom who would like to read this first chapter to go ahead and raise your hand electronically. It looks like Pat has done that, so go ahead, sir.
6 benefits in realizing the fruit of stream entry. Monks, there are the 6 benefits in realizing the fruit of stream entry. What 6? 1, one is fixed in the wholesome teachings. 2, one is incapable of decline. 3, one's discontentedness is limited. 4, one comes to possess wisdom not shared by others. 5, one has clearly seen causation. 6, one has clearly seen casually arisen objects. These are the 6 benefits in realizing the fruit of stream entry. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Pat. So these are the words of the Buddha of what is the benefit of actually experiencing the first stage of enlightenment. There would have been a significant amount of work to be able to get to that first stage of enlightenment, learning the Eightfold Path and a lot of other teachings as well, implementing that into your day-to-day life as well, because it's not just about intellectual learning, it's about reflecting on that to verify the teachings and then practicing them, making decisions through those teachings. It's kind of like upgrading the operating system in your mind and now start making wiser and wiser decisions based in these natural laws. So there are certain benefits associated with that, and the Buddha's laid them out for you here so that you understand what it is that you're actually headed towards. So the first one is that by the time someone gets to this first stage of enlightenment, they will be fixed in the wholesome teachings. What that means is that you've seen a significant amount of progress by the time you've gotten to the first stage of enlightenment. Your mind's not enlightened yet. There's still more work to do, but you're fixed in these teachings, meaning you know that they're actually leading to enlightenment, that you've seen significant progress to your mind and to your life, your relationships are improving, you're starting to see the benefits already. And you still have work to do, and you'll know that, but you won't have any doubt about the teachings. That prior to the first stage of enlightenment, an individual will have doubt. They'll have doubt of whether maybe the Buddha even existed or whether he was enlightened. They'll have doubt about the teachings. They'll have doubt about a community that maybe they're part of. They might have doubt about their teacher. They might even have doubt about their own ability to get to enlightenment. But as you're actually doing it and you're putting the pieces together and you're seeing these significant improvements to your mind and your life, you'll know that these teachings are working. And it's just a matter of time to just keep learning and keep practicing and continuing your journey to enlightenment. So you'll be fixed in these wholesome teachings. You won't be looking elsewhere. You won't be looking for a spiritual life in other places. You won't be, looking at other places to figure out like, oh, are these teachings going to work? Or those teachings are going to work? Or these teachings going to work? You'll know that the collection of teachings that you're learning is actually working because you'll have seen the evidence for yourself. Also, once you get to the first stage of enlightenment, the mind is incapable of decline. What that means is that whatever progress you've experienced in terms of concentration and focus, clarity of mind, in terms of any wisdom that you've cultivated, in terms of any kind of progress that you've made, your mind will be incapable of backsliding or regressing because you've made it to a certain point of development and your mind is fixed in those wholesome teachings, and now it's incapable of backsliding and regressing backwards. So that's one of the benefits of getting to the first stage of enlightenment. There's only forward progress from that point forward. Also, getting into that first stage of enlightenment, you'll notice that your discontentedness is limited. You'll still be experiencing discontentedness in the first stage of enlightenment. Even in the third stage of enlightenment, there's still some minor discontentedness. It's not until the fourth stage where the mind's actually enlightened where there won't be any discontentedness whatsoever. But whatever discontentedness you're experiencing in the first stage of enlightenment, it's a mere fraction of what it once was when you were off the path to enlightenment. So if you had a certain amount of bitterness or harshness or hostility or whatever it is that was in your mind, whether it was guilt or shame or sadness or shyness or whatever it was, embarrassment, any of these discontent feelings that you're experiencing, stress and anxiety, it will be limited. It'll be a mere fraction of what it once was because you've done a certain amount of work to be able to get to that point in the first stage of enlightenment, and that's where you're seeing the progress. There's certain wisdom that you will have in this first stage of enlightenment that not other people have. And this is where you really need to keep your conceit in check, because you will have been learning about the natural laws, you've been learning about the world around you, and you're going to notice that things become easier and easier for you. It becomes effortless. You are presented with a certain challenge where in the past you might have looked at it as a problem. You might have been kind of dragging yourself through your day. You might have been exhausted and tired at different times. You're going to notice your mind becomes a bit more cheerful, a bit more bright, a bit more uplifted in that first stage of enlightenment as you're progressing. Even in the jhanas, you'll experience some of those things. And this is all from cultivating wisdom of the natural laws. And now when you have that wisdom, you'll need to appreciate it and not allow your conceit or your ego to come in, because you're going to be around friends and family, coworkers, neighbors, people like this that are encountering certain challenges in their day-to-day life. And it's going to seem like such a drag for them. It's going to seem like it's such a big, enormous problem. And you're looking at it and you're hearing what it is that they're saying. And to you, it's just so simple and so easy because of this wisdom that you have. And again, this is where you need to keep your ego in check and any conceit, because you might feel like you want to jump in there and tell them exactly how to solve that particular issue, where that would be unwise because you're giving unsolicited guidance. So there's going to be certain wisdom that you have in that first stage of enlightenment that other people don't have. There's more wisdom that you need to cultivate from the first stage of enlightenment and onwards, but you will have a significant amount of wisdom to have gotten to that first stage of enlightenment. And this is where the ego can come in and you can start being prideful or arrogant or boastful or looking down on others because they lack wisdom and they struggle with even the most minute thing. To you, it looks like so simple. It's just impermanence. That's all it is. But to them, they're just struggling so much. So there's going to be certain wisdom that you'll have that other people don't have. By the time you've gotten to the first stage of enlightenment, you will have clearly seen causation. What this means is that you will have clearly seen the natural law of dhamma, of cause and effect, or action and result. That you don't believe in the natural law of dhamma, you've seen it with your own two eyes. That you know that it's true with 100%. That there's no such thing as good luck or bad luck or destiny or fate. It's not God or some entity called the universe that is controlling what we experience. And it's not other people that are producing the results that we experience. It's our own decisions that are leading to that. So for example, if you went outside, which I don't suggest you do this, but if you went outside and you punched someone in the face, what do you think is going to happen? They're probably going to punch you back, right? Or they're going to pull out a knife or a gun, or their friends or family are going to attack you. Maybe they call the police and you get arrested. That is your karma. That is the unwholesome karma from the unwise decision. But likewise, if you go out into the world and you're polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, more likely than not, what you're going to experience is people being polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to you. That is the dhamma. And if you can see this very clearly, then you've clearly seen causation, that you know that this natural law of dhamma is true. Because when we talk about cultivation of wisdom and wisdom that you have that others don't have, it's the wisdom of this natural law. That's what the Buddha is helping you to awaken to. When we talk about awakening to enlightenment or to be awake, it means to have cultivated wisdom. So by cultivating wisdom, you will now be able to navigate the world more peacefully. Because when you're experiencing stress, anxiety, frustration, and all these other feelings, that's because the mind's struggling to live in a world that it doesn't understand. But when you cultivate the wisdom of this natural law, you will now be able to navigate the world more peacefully. Just like with the natural law of gravity, we struggled with that, but slowly but surely we awoke to that natural law, and now we don't struggle with it anymore. But there's other natural laws that are affecting us, whether we're aware of it or not, and you would have clearly seen this causation. You're not fully awake to the natural law of dhamma by the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment, but you have clearly seen it. Notice that the Buddha doesn't say you will believe, right? Because there's no belief here. It's that you have seen it with your own eyes. You will have independently verified it. Then the last one here, he says, one has clearly seen causally arisen objects. What this is dependent origination, that you will have independently verified dependent origination by the time you've gotten to the first stage of enlightenment. And because of that, you'll understand what your core purpose is on this path to enlightenment, which is to cultivate wisdom. Because if you remember back to last week's class, with dependent origination, there's ignorance, which leads to volitional formations, which then leads to the consciousness, which then leads to the physical body and taking up the physical body of name and form, which then leads to the 6 sense bases, which is then going to experience contact through those 6 sense bases. You will then experience feelings. The mind is then going to experience craving and clinging. Then there's going to be an existence. Then there's going to be birth, aging, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. This is how this whole mass of discontentedness comes to be. So while the Four Noble Truths gives you a little window into the mind and it penetrates right into it, and it says, hey, craving, desire, attachment is what's causing discontentedness. That's like the answer. If you've ever turned in a math paper when you were going to school and you wrote down the answer is 45, and you turn that in and your teacher was like, show me the work. Well, the 45 is the Four Noble Truths. Like, here's the answer. It's craving, desire, attachment that's causing these discontent feelings. But then when you go look at the work and you look at what's all the detail, that's dependent origination. And that's where when you trace back from discontentedness all the way back through dependent origination, you see what the root cause is ignorance or the unknowing of true reality. And that's your ultimate goal in this path, is to cultivate wisdom, eliminate cravings, which is then going to work to eliminate your anger. And this is what dependent origination can help you to understand. And you can see these individual objects that are leading to continuous birth and continuous discontentedness. But if you can see what leads to continuous birth and continuous discontentedness, and you track that down and you independently verify it, then you also know what leads to complete peace and complete joy, and what leads to the elimination of continuous birth, which is the cultivation of wisdom, the elimination of craving and clinging. That's what's going to completely purify the mind and get to the point where it's experiencing complete peace and joy, and there's no longer any discontentedness, that there's no longer any rebirth in the cycle of rebirth. So these are the 6 benefits that the Buddha is sharing with you about the first stage of enlightenment. And one of the things that I've shared in a previous class is I talked about how by getting to the first stage of enlightenment, it's like being at base camp of Mount Everest. You're not going to stumble into base camp at Mount Everest. You would have put some concerted effort, some conscious work into evaluating equipment, doing some test hikes, finding a really good tour guide that can help you. All different kinds of things would have went into you getting to base camp in Mount Everest. People don't just stumble into that, right? And you're not enlightened yet. You're not at the summit of the Mount Everest, but you've got everything you need at that point to be able to get to the summit. So that's what the Buddha is talking about here, is that you've essentially got everything you need. You're still going to need help. You're still going to need guidance. There's still wisdom that you need to cultivate, because there's still the unknowing of true reality in the mind, because it's not fully enlightened yet. But yet you're ready to be able to now move from that first stage of enlightenment and beyond. And that's what the Buddha is helping you to see by sharing these 6 benefits. That's what he's encapsulating, saying, hey, you've got everything you need at this point. So let me know what questions you guys have here. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So let's move to the next one, chapter 22. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, Vibhav, go ahead, sir.
A stream enterer is worth more than being a wheel-turning monarch. Monks, although a wheel-turning monarch, having exercised supreme sovereign rulership over the 4 continents, with the breakup of the body after death, is reborn in a good destination, in a heavenly world, in the company of heavenly beings of the heavenly realm, and there in the Nandana grove, accompanied by an entourage of heavenly nymphs, he enjoys himself supplied and endowed with the 5 quarters of heavenly sensual pleasure. Still, as he does not possess 4 things, he is not freed from hell, the animal realm, and the realm of afflicted spirits, not freed from the plane of misery, the bad destinations, the netherworld. Although, monks, a noble disciple maintains himself by lumps of alms food and wears rag robes, still, as he possesses 4 things, he is freed from hell, the animal realm, and the realm of afflicted spirits, freed from the plane of misery, the bad destinations, the netherworld. What are the 4? Here, monks, the noble disciple possesses confirmed confidence in the Buddha thus: the Tathagata is an Arahant, perfectly enlightened, accomplished in the true wisdom and conduct, fortunate, knower of the worlds, unsurpassed leader of the persons to be tamed, teacher of heavenly beings and humans, the enlightened one, the fortunate one. He possesses confirmed confidence in the teachings thus: the teachings are well expounded by the perfectly enlightened one, directly visible, immediate, inviting one to come and see, applicable, to be personally experienced by the wise. 3. He possesses confirmed confidence in the community thus: the community of the perfectly enlightened one's disciples is practicing the wholesome way, practicing the straight way, practicing the true way, practicing the proper way. That is, the 4 pair of persons, the 8 types of individuals. This community of the perfectly enlightened one's disciples is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, the unsurpassed field of merit for the world. He possesses the virtues, moral conduct near to the noble ones, unbroken, untorn, unblemished, unblotched, liberating, praised with the wise, not misunderstood, and leading to concentration. He possesses these 4 things, and, monks, between the obtaining of sovereignty over the 4 continents and the obtaining of the 4 things, the obtaining of the sovereignty over the 4 continents is not worth the 16th part of the obtaining of the 4 things. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Vibhav. So first, let's talk about what a wheel-turning monarch is, because I'm not sure if we've talked about this in this program yet. What a wheel-turning monarch is an individual who's in a leadership role, who's guiding and kind of like leading a group of people. And during the lifetime of the Buddha, this was typically kings or queens that were kind of ruling over maybe 5,000 people, 10,000 people, 100,000 people, and so forth and so on. So those individuals, the Buddha would refer to if they were sharing his teachings in terms of making decisions through his teachings, he would call them a wheel-turning monarch. The reason why they called a wheel-turning monarch is because the dhamma wheel that goes around in a circle with the 8 spokes, this is said to be on the head of a Buddha. And when a Buddha awakens to enlightenment, they reach up with their right hand and they turn that dhamma wheel counterclockwise. It's not actually on the head. It's not a physical thing. It's a figurative thing. And for a Buddha to turn that wheel counterclockwise, meaning that a Buddha actually exists in the world, it means that humanity has entered into a new era, that we now have the teachings that are strong and bright, and they're going to be shining in the world because a Buddha can bring the teachings in the world into the world in such a way that they can really be shining, and countless people can get to enlightenment. So a Buddha is said to turn that dhamma wheel because it's helping humanity to step forward into this new era. Well, an individual who's in a leadership role, who is during the lifetime of a Buddha, they were in the king or a queen, if they're making decisions through the teachings of the Buddha, it's helping to move humanity forward, right? Because like as a king, if somebody was stealing and you made wise decisions to be able to teach this person who's in your population and your kingdom to help them to understand how stealing is unwise, or if somebody was lying and you were doing things to maybe help them to be able to understand that lying is unwise, this is helping to turn the wheel and help humanity to step forward into this new era. So a wheel turning monarch is helpful to the world. Today we might think about this person not just as a king or a queen, but like someone that is maybe like a president or a prime minister, or even like the boss of a company, right? If somebody was leading 10 or 20 or 100 or 5,000 people in a company and they were making decisions through the teachings of the Buddha, then people would be able to see those decisions and they would learn from that. The population of people that they're leading would learn from that. So having a wheel-turning monarch, a leader who is guiding this group of people with the teachings of the Buddha, is very helpful to the world. But the Buddha is saying that that type of person isn't nearly as helpful as someone who's gotten to this first stage of enlightenment. Someone who's gotten to the first stage of enlightenment, they will no longer be reborn into the lower realms. We've talked about that in previous classes, that because this individual is functioning as a better and better human being, getting into that first stage of enlightenment, if they die in that stage, they will come back into the human realm. They will never again be reborn into the lower realms. So he talks about that in this paragraph, that the hell, animal, and afflicted spirits realm are not realms that that individual would be reborn into. They have various qualities to have gotten into this first stage of enlightenment. These are 4 of them that you're going to see repeated over and over and over in the teachings of the Buddha. That they have confirmed confidence in the Buddha, confirmed confidence in the teachings, confirmed confidence in the community, and they're practicing a certain amount of moral conduct. So having confirmed confidence in the Buddha is that, again, when someone's gotten to the first stage of enlightenment, they will have seen a significant amount of progress to the condition of their mind in their life. So they will have confidence in this individual because they will know, oh my goodness, this person lived 2,500 years ago. He spoke and he taught his teachings. And here I am today learning those teachings, and I see the progress that I'm experiencing because of that. That individual was definitely a Buddha, because a Buddha meets 3 criteria. Is they get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people, and countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. And then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. So if you're studying the teachings of the Buddha from 2,500 years ago, and you're experiencing progress on the path to enlightenment, you know that he was definitely a Buddha because his teachings are here and available for you to be able to now make your way to enlightenment, and you can see that that's occurring. So you'll have confidence that this individual lived because you can learn his teachings, you can reflect on them, and you can practice them and see that they actually work. And through your independent verification, you'll be able to independently verify his teachings. And you'll be able to see everywhere around you that his teachings exist. When you're walking down the street and you experience impermanence, there's the Buddha. You're walking through your neighborhood and a dog starts barking at you because you're walking in front of their house. This is the dog's mind being discontent because it's craving permanence. It doesn't want anybody to be in front of its house. It's craving that permanence to have nobody in front of its house. And now it's going to be bitter and harsh and hostile because its craving is getting triggered. This ill will is coming out towards you. So as you walk around the world, you're in an airport and you see somebody's flight is delayed and they get angry and frustrated. You can see, they're craving. So that means they're craving thing didn't get fulfilled, so now their anger is arising. You'll be able to see his teachings everywhere. So you'll know that this individual 100% existed and he's a Buddha. Then you'll have confirmed confidence in the teachings because you'll have learned them deeply enough to be able to see that they're working, and you'll have confidence in those teachings. You'll have confidence in the community that you're part of. Because in order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need a teacher, but you also need to be part of a community where you can learn from other members of the community. You're going to maybe learn formally from your teacher, but you'll see how other people interact among the community in terms of maybe their politeness, kindness, friendliness, and respect, the way they're practicing right speech, maybe the way that they're practicing generosity or compassion or sympathetic joy and all these other qualities of mind that you're going to be practicing and needing to practice. You'll see other people practicing and it's like, oh, I see now. I see what they're doing. Oh, I'd like to incorporate some of that into my life. So those other people might not even know that you're learning from them. But this is one of the ways that you actually will progress to enlightenment is by being around other people who are on the path. And today you can do that physically, but you can also do that online. There's an online ability to do that. In fact, we're getting ready to launch in a few weeks a student online forum where you can interact with other students in our community. So having the ability to interact with other members of your community is going to help you to actually get to enlightenment. And you'll have confidence in that community because you'll be able to see that they're practicing the true way, the proper way, the wholesome way. And you'll be able to identify with that and be able to now incorporate that more and more into your life. Then lastly, these virtues that are dear to the noble ones. That's the moral conduct. That by the time you've gotten to this first stage of enlightenment, you're practicing right speech, right action, and right livelihood to the first level of detail from the Eightfold Path. And this is going to lead to your concentration. Oftentimes people are doing a lot of meditation, just trying to train their mind through meditation. Meditation is important, but you actually wouldn't be able to get to concentration and focus and peace and joy and all these other qualities of mind without practicing the moral conduct, because the moral conduct is what's knocking down the pollutions of the mind. By eliminating the pollutions of the mind, that's what's actually helping you to get that improved quality of mind. So oftentimes people emphasize meditation because they think the Buddha sat under a tree, he meditated and instantly got to enlightenment. You need meditation and you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment without it. But you also need this moral conduct because, for example, if someone's stealing, there's a certain amount of craving, there's a certain amount of ill will or anger, and there's a certain amount of ignorance, right? So if somebody's eliminated their stealing and taking from others, then they've eliminated a certain amount of craving, anger, and ignorance. Or lying. It takes a certain amount of craving, anger, and ignorance to be able to lie. And if you've actually stopped lying and you only speak the truth, now you've reduced a certain amount of craving, anger, and ignorance in your mind. And that's what's leading to the concentration. So whenever you're studying moral conduct from the Buddha, it's important that you don't look at it as rules and commandments, and you also don't look at it as black and white. That's sometimes how people look at moral conduct, is like black and white. Always do it this way and never do it that way. That's not what's going to lead to your enlightenment, because there's a whole gray area that you need to be able to navigate. So you need to be able to not look at this as rules and commandments, but instead see the craving, anger, and ignorance as part of each teaching that the Buddha is sharing with you, to be able to help you see that he's helping you to knock that down and eliminate it. And that's what's actually leading to improvement to your mind and your life as you're making more and more decisions through the wholesome qualities of the mind, no longer conducting any kind of unwise moral conduct. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this, which is these 4 qualities that the Buddha is teaching you. And he's saying that, this person is more beneficial to the world than a wheel-turning monarch, because this individual is actually going to be able to help other people and influence other people to be able to make their way to enlightenment. These first 3, we refer to them as the triple gem or the triple jewel, and then you have the moral conduct as well. So you can ask questions by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, I don't see any questions. So we'll go to the next one, which is chapter 23. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, Kristen, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, teacher. Oops. Okay, chapter 23, yes?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Okay, chapter 23. There cannot be alteration in a stream enterer. Monks, there may be alteration in the four great elements, in the earth element, water element, the fire element, the wind element. But there cannot be alteration in the noble disciple who possesses confirmed confidence in the Buddha, in the teachings, in the community. Therein, this is alteration, that the noble disciple who possesses confirmed confidence in the Buddha might be reborn in hell, in the animal realm, or in the realm of afflicted spirits. This is impossible. Monks, there may be alteration in the four great elements, in the earth element, the water element, the fire element, the wind element, but there cannot be alteration in the noble disciple who possesses the virtues dear to the noble ones. Therein, this is alteration, that the noble disciple who possesses the virtues, moral conduct, dear to the noble ones, might be reborn in hell, in the animal realm, or in the realm of afflicted spirits. This is impossible.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. So here, remember, whenever the Buddha is talking about the four great elements, he's talking about material objects. He's talking about the physical body. That's how they would describe these things: earth, water, fire, and wind. Where today we use things like atoms and cells and molecules. We have much more detailed scientific methods to be able to describe these things, where during his lifetime, that was the way they would describe it. So what the Buddha is saying is, hey, you might see alteration to this physical body. You might see alteration to material objects, but you're not going to see alteration to the mind of someone who's gotten to the first stage of enlightenment. It's impossible. So he's taking that benefit that he was talking about previously, that there's no regression, there's no decline, and he's really flushing it out here and saying it's impossible for this individual to experience decline or regression. So let me know if you guys have questions here. This is just a more detailed teaching of something we've already been talking about. Okay, I don't see any questions. So now let's go to the next one. This is chapter 24. This is going to be the first discourse of multiple discourses of helping you to understand how to get to accomplishment in view, because this is beyond establishing right view. Looks like Pat. Go ahead, sir.
6 cases of incompatibility by one accomplished in view. First discourse. Monks, there are these 6 causes of incompatibility. What 6? One accomplished in view is incapable of considering any conditioned phenomenon, thing, as permanent, incapable of considering any conditioned phenomenon as pleasurable, incapable of considering any phenomenon as a self, incapable of doing a grave act that brings immediate results, incapable of resorting to the belief that purity, enlightenment, comes about through superstitious and auspicious acts, incapable of seeking a person worthy of offerings outside here. These are the 6 causes or cases of incompatibility. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Pat. So here, like I mentioned, we're going to have 4 different discourses where the Buddha goes through 6 things that are actually an individual is incapable of, right? So these aren't the only 6, but this is one collection of 6, right? So by the time you've gotten to accomplishment in view, you will be incapable of these things. So when you first get on the path to enlightenment, you will start to work on establishing right view. That's understanding the Four Noble Truths, penetrating into that, and being able to see through your own independent verification that it's your own mind that's causing these discontent feelings, that it's craving, desire, attachment. This is what we call establishing right view, that you can see clearly right view that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Wrong view would be to blame your feelings on other people. As you've done that and you've developed that and you start practicing that more and more, looking inward, being reflective and introspective about what it is that you're experiencing in terms of the feelings that you're having on a day-to-day basis, then eventually you would like to start working on developing accomplishment in view, which is beyond establishing right view. So these are things, right? So this first one, and these first 3, really, we could say these are the universal truths. For anybody who's established right view, they would have intellectually learned the 3 universal truths of impermanence, discontentedness, and the universal truth of non-self. So you might have learned that intellectually as you were establishing right view, but by the time you get to accomplishment in view, you would be incapable of considering anything as permanent, that you would know all these conditioned objects are constantly changing. They arise, change, and fade away. You would be incapable of chasing after pleasurable things, thinking that this object is going to produce some kind of pleasure. By the time that you get to the first stage of enlightenment, you still have central desire. So you still have craving in your mind, and you're working on eliminating that. But you at least understand intellectually that continuing to chase is really unwise. And by the time you get to this first stage of enlightenment and accomplishment in view, you will have plenty of enjoyment where you will enjoy the things around you, but you won't consider these external things to be what is going to produce your pleasure. You will already know that that enjoyment comes internally, that you're not looking for it externally. But because of the mind's central desire, it will still do it. But intellectually, you will know. So here, when the Buddha says that you will be incapable of considering a conditioned phenomenon as pleasurable, that doesn't mean that you won't be experiencing enjoyment. It means that intellectually you understand external objects isn't what's going to produce pleasure for you, because that's undesirable. It's only temporary. Where in the past, you might have gotten so excited about that new phone that's coming out, and you're going to purchase that new phone, and you just can't wait to get to the store and get that phone. Or maybe it's a new car or a vacation, or you just get so excited about that external thing. And then, of course, as you guys know, once you get the thing, you're experiencing happiness, but then that happiness fades away. You will have seen enough of that by the time you get to accomplishment in view, and you'll know intellectually that it's unwise to seek pleasure externally. And this is where more and more you can start training your mind to enjoy something without conditioned pleasant feelings. That sounds kind of strange for some people, because you probably enjoy something when you're experiencing conditional happiness. That's what you're experiencing now. But what you can train the mind to be able to do is get to the point where you can enjoy something while not experiencing conditional pleasant feelings. And you can enjoy this thing, and you can enjoy that thing, and you can enjoy this thing, and you can enjoy that thing, and you can enjoy that thing. You can enjoy everything, right? Where in the unenlightened state, you can only enjoy when you get things your way. That's the only time you can enjoy something, right? When it's going your way. And now that's a very small amount of time, because not everything's going to go your way. So this is what the Buddha is explaining here, is that you have already seen and understood and be incapable of considering that something external is going to provide you some kind of pleasure. That's not the pleasure that you're interested in by the time you've gotten to accomplishment in view. And then you'd be incapable of considering any particular phenomenon or object or thing as the self, because you would have understood the universal truth of non-self, and you would have eliminated personal existence view, that you will have realized non-self, to know that this body is not you, this mind is not you, the choices and decisions that you make, that's not you either. You will have already seen that very clearly, and you won't be able to identify anything as being a self. So these are the three universal truths that is part of establishing right view you would have intellectually understood, but now by the time you get to accomplishment in view, you'd be incapable of considering anything to be permanent, to be something that to seek pleasure in, or something that would be considered to be a self. And that's something that the mind needs to work on. Then the fourth one here is that you'd be incapable of doing a grave act that brings immediate results. We're going to actually study this here in a moment, that there's 5 acts that someone accomplished in view would be incapable of doing, that it's going to actually bring immediate results, meaning immediate unwholesome karma. Sometimes people refer to these as the 5 heinous crimes. I don't refer to it that way, but I use it because I think it's funny, right? The 5 heinous crimes, right? But these are actually grave acts that will bring immediate results. Things like killing your mother and father, killing an enlightened being, and things like this. So I'll show you those when we get to that discourse here in a moment. Then the 5th one here is incapable of resorting to the belief that purity or enlightenment comes about through superstitious or auspicious acts, because you would have eliminated wrong observances already. that you will understand through dependent origination that the ultimate goal in order to get to enlightenment is to cultivate wisdom. And there's no amount of superstitious or auspicious acts that's going to lead to enlightenment. Because if you've penetrated into dependent origination, you know what the number one problem is, which is ignorance or the unknowing of true reality. So there's no amount of rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, prayers, things like that that's going to produce wisdom. You need to be able to get to wisdom in order to be able to break up dependent origination and utterly destroy it. So you would be incapable of resorting to the belief that somehow you're going to get to enlightenment through some type of superstitious or auspicious thing. You'll see people sometimes, saying, oh, you got to buy these beads, or you've got to do this ceremony and pay us this money. Or I've heard people say that there's got to be a portal that opens up in the world in order for human beings to walk through this portal in order to be able to get to enlightenment. This is superstitious and auspicious things. And you will have already been able to understand that that's not true by the time you've gotten to accomplishment in view. And then the last one here in this particular discourse is incapable of seeking a person worthy of offerings outside of here. What the Buddha is saying is outside of his community, because you might think that during the lifetime of a Buddha that the Buddha would be the only one teaching. But that's not the case. During the lifetime of a Buddha, there's going to be other people that are teaching too, and claiming that it's their teachings that actually lead to enlightenment, where the Buddha knows that it's his teachings that lead to enlightenment. But by the time you've gotten to accomplishment in view, you will have seen significant progress to the condition of your mind and your life, and you will know that it's these teachings that are leading to enlightenment. And you would be incapable of making an offering to somebody outside of that community, because you know those people that are hanging themselves upside down from trees, that are laying on beds of nails, that are piercing their body with metal implements, that are starving themselves, that are doing all this foo-foo, fluffy stuff that doesn't lead to the cultivation of wisdom, you know that stuff's not leading to enlightenment. So if you're practicing discernment, where you're interested in helping people get to enlightenment through the cultivation of merit and accumulating merit, you would be interested, if you're going to make offerings, to do it among a community that you know are practicing the true teachings. So that's why he's saying this here, that this isn't a rule, this isn't something that he's trying to convince you to do. He's just saying this is what you would do, because you will have already seen the truth, and you would already know on your own that it's these teachings that are leading to progress for your enlightenment, and you'd be interested in potentially seeing other people get access to those same teachings. So you'd be incapable of making offerings outside of that community. So let me know what questions you guys have here on these 6, and then we'll study the other ones as well. Okay, no questions here. So we'll go to the next one. Is there someone who would like to read this next one? This is the next 6. This is chapter 25. Okay, it looks like Kristen. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, teacher. 6 cases of incapability by one accomplished in view. Second discourse. Monks, there are these 6 cases of incapability. What 6? One accomplished in view is 1, incapable of residing without deep respect and politeness toward the teacher. 2, incapable of residing without deep respect and politeness toward the teachings. 3, incapable of residing without deep respect and politeness toward the community. 4, incapable of residing without deep respect and politeness toward the training. 5, incapable of resorting to anything that should not be relied upon. 6, incapable of undergoing an eighth existence. These are the 6 cases of incapability.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. So these are another 6, right? We have 4 discourses here that, remember, by the time you've gotten to accomplishment in view, you're in that first stage of enlightenment. Your discontentedness is a mere fraction of what it once was. You're seeing all this progress in terms of your cultivation of wisdom. Your mind is improving. You're getting more focus and concentration. Your relationships are improving. You're going to see all this progress. And you will know that whatever teacher it was that helped you to be able to get to that, they would have helped you out of the kindness of their heart, right? They're not charging you $10,000. They're not, forcing you to do any particular thing. They're just helping you without any expectation of anything in return. And that person that has helped you, you would have deep respect towards that person and politeness, because that person was able to help you to be able to experience this improvement to your mind and your life. So you'd be incapable of residing without that respect or politeness towards that person. The same thing for the teachings and the community, because again, there's been that certain amount of progress. So you'd have this deep respect and politeness towards the teachings themselves and this community who you've been learning with, and you've been slowly being able to see how to model your practice as you've been progressing along the path. Then you'd also be incapable of residing without deep respect and politeness towards the training. So there's the teachings themselves, but then there's the day-to-day training and knowing that this training is working to help you. Then there's incapability of resorting to anything that should not be relied upon. What that means is that by the time you've gotten to accomplishment in view, you've learned, investigated, and examined teachings, you've reflected to independently verify them, and you've actually been practicing them too. And you see how this process has led to the cultivation of wisdom and has led to the improvement to the condition of the mind in your life. So you're going to be incapable of just relying on something, that instead you would like to see the truth. You would like to see it for yourself. Right? Like the other day I was downstairs and my son made himself some food, and he's like almost 14 now, and of course we remember when he was a little kid and he was eating certain foods, and he made this big bowl of, here in Thailand we call it kai palo. It's eggs, and there's like 9 eggs in this huge bowl with rice in there. And he said, "All right, Dad, I'm going upstairs to eat." And I was like, "You're going to eat all those eggs?" He's like, "Yeah, I eat 9 eggs now for every meal, or at each meal. Whenever I eat this, I eat 9. I was like, "I don't think that that's true." I was like, "I would like to see it with my own eyes." He's like, "All right, I'll sit right here and eat it in front of you." So he ate downstairs instead of going up to his room, right? You would like to see it for yourself, right? Not every single thing like this. This is kind of like something that I was just interested in seeing. And if he was like, "No, I'm just going to go up to my room," okay, no big deal. See you later, right? But in terms of like you making decisions, you're going to need to make decisions in order to be able to get to certain results in your life. And you're going to know that making decisions based in wisdom, making decisions based in truth, is what's going to actually lead to those wholesome results. Whenever you make decisions based in untruths or misperceptions or things that are not true reality, then you're going to experience unwholesome results. So you will have made enough wise decisions to get to this first stage of enlightenment and accomplishment in view, and seen this progress to your mind, that you will get to the point where you're going to verify each individual tiny thing as you're making your way forward in life. That it's never just going to be an assumption about one thing or another. You'd like to see it with your own eyes. And that's how you're going to be able to cultivate wisdom. So you'll be incapable of resorting to anything that should not be relied upon, because you're going to have investigated and examined things through the investigation of the teachings, reflecting on them to verify them, and then practice them, and you'll see that result that it's produced. And you'll do that not just with the teachings of the Buddha, but with your daily life too, right? If your son or your daughter comes to you and says, "Hey, Mom, Dad, I cleaned my room." Okay, let me go see. Right? You're not going to just be like, "All right, whatever," right? You would like to, "All right, let's go take a look," right? And now you go take a look and you see for yourself. Okay, great. I see you've cleaned your room, right? So you're not going to just assume things by the time you get to accomplishment in view, because you're going to need to get to 100% wise decisions in all situations. And you can't do that if you just make assumptions, because in that situation, you're just clinging to a perception. And if you make assumptions, it's going to lead to unwholesome results for you. Then the last one here in this particular discourse is that you'd be incapable of undergoing an 8th existence. Because by the time you get to that first stage of enlightenment, that there's not going to be an 8th existence. It's a maximum of 7 more existences before you actually will get to enlightenment. It doesn't have to be 7, but there's a maximum of 7, that you're incapable of having that 8th existence. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this particular discourse. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. So let's go to the next one. This is the third discourse, chapter 26. Is there someone who would like to read this? Okay, Yihang, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Teacher David. 6 cases of incapability by one accomplished in view. Third discourse. Monks, there are these 6 cases of incapability. What 6? 1 accomplished in view is 1 incapable of depriving his mother of life. 2 incapable of depriving his father of life. 3 incapable of depriving an arahant of life. 4 incapable of shedding the Tathagata's blood with a mind of hatred. 5 incapable of creating a division in the community. 6 incapable of acknowledging another teacher. These are the 6 cases of incapability. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Yihang. So as I've shared with you guys before, it's so important that we don't look at the teachings of the Buddha in isolation. You've got to see the totality of the teachings. And here you can see that if you just read that first discourse, you might think like, these are the only 6 cases of incapability of one accomplished in view. But now you can see the Buddha's fleshing it out more and more with additional discourses. So these first 5 are the ones that we were referring to before about you be incapable of performing a grave act that would bring immediate results. These first 5 are considered the 5 heinous crimes. That's what some people refer to them as, right? Because it produces immediate results. Like, for example, if you killed your mother and father, those are 2 people who are typically in your corner no matter what happens in life. No matter what you do, those 2 people are there to support you and help you through life. Typically, not always, but typically, right? Well, if you killed one of them, that's going to bring immediate unwholesome karma, because now you've just eliminated a person that is in your corner looking for your success and vying for your success, right? So you'd be incapable of depriving your mother or father of life, because by getting to that first stage of enlightenment, you would have understood by being in this human existence, this is the very best place for you to be able to make your way to enlightenment. And you would be very thankful and appreciative and have gratitude towards your mother and father for having allowed you to be able to have this life. Now, of course, you're not going to agree with everything your mother and father has done in their life or the decisions that they've made, but you can at least have appreciation and gratitude for the fact that they were able to give you life, bring you up, and help you to be able to get on your own 2 feet, where now you're an adult and you can start making decisions on your own. So you'd be incapable of depriving these 2 important people of life, meaning you'd be incapable of killing them or murdering them. The same thing is true about an arahant. An arahant is an enlightened being, and you would understand how important it is to have enlightened beings in the world, because they're actually going to be able to help other people to get to enlightenment. One of the best ways to preserve the teachings of the Buddha is for people to get to enlightenment. You wouldn't be able to just read a book and actually get to enlightenment. So you're going to need a real live teacher, someone who is familiar with enlightenment and how to actually get to it. So if somebody was accomplished in view, they would be incapable of killing an enlightened being, because they understand how important that person is to the rest of the world and to themselves. Because remember, they've experienced a certain amount of progress in their mind and in their life, that they would like to experience more of that progress. And having an enlightened being around is really important and helpful. So they would be incapable of killing an enlightened being. Same thing with a Tathagata. A Tathagata is a Buddha. If you live during the lifetime of a Buddha, this individual would be able to really help you in ways that other people wouldn't be able to, even above and beyond what an average enlightened being would be able to help you. So you would understand, having accomplishment in view, how important an actual Buddha is to the world. And this type of individual is very rare in the world. The last one that the world's currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. So you would be incapable of shedding a Buddha's blood with a mind of hatred, because you would understand how important this person is. And if you're living during the lifetime of a Buddha, that's the very best thing that could ever happen for you. And you would be incapable of creating division in the community, because you would understand how important that community is to your own growth and your own development. So you would be incapable of creating division amongst a community. So these are the 5 heinous crimes, or the 5 acts that bring grave immediate results. And then there's this sixth one here, which is you'd be incapable of acknowledging another teacher. And the reason why is because you've experienced so much progress and you know that that teacher was the one that was helping you to be able to get to that. And you'd be incapable of acknowledging another person as being a teacher. Because if this particular person has helped you get to that significant progress, well, you know it's just a matter of time before you actually learn enough from that person to be able to then get to enlightenment. So you'd be incapable of acknowledging another teacher because this person has already helped you so much and you've seen so much progress to your mind. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this particular discourse. Okay, I don't see any there. So we'll go to this last one as part of this series, which is chapter 27. This is the last of this 4 discourse series that is helping you to understand accomplishment in view. It looks like Pat would like to read that one. Go ahead, sir.
6 cases of incapability by one accomplished in view. 4th discourse. Monks, there are these 6 cases of incapability. What 6? One accomplished in view is incapable of resorting to the view that pleasure and pain are made by oneself. Incapable of resorting to the view that pleasure and pain are made by another. Incapable of resorting to the view that pleasure and pain are both made by oneself and made by another. Incapable of resorting to the view that pleasure and pain are not made by oneself but have arisen by accident or chance. Incapable of resorting to the view that pleasure and pain are not made by another, but have arisen by accident or chance. Incapable of resorting to the view that pleasure and pain are made neither by oneself nor by another, but have arisen by accident or chance. These are the 6 cases of incapability. For what reason? Because the person accomplished in view has clearly seen causation and casually arisen objects. These are the 6 cases of incapability. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Pat. So here the Buddha is saying that these 6 things an individual would be incapable of if they've gotten to accomplishment in view because they've clearly seen the natural law of karma and they've clearly seen dependent origination. That if you thought that pleasure and pain was made by one's self, then that means that the mind hasn't realized non-self, that it doesn't realize that it's not oneself that's causing these discontent feelings, it's craving, desire, attachment, and the lack of wisdom in the mind. That's what's actually causing it, not oneself, because there's no self here. You would be incapable of resorting to the view that pleasure and pain are made by another, meaning another person, because you know it's coming from the mind itself, right? Or pleasure and pain are made both by oneself and made by another. You know that that's not true. That you know that you would be incapable of resorting to the view that pleasure and pain are not made by oneself, but have arisen by accident or chance. Right? That meaning there is no cause. There is no, cause and effect here. It's just by accident, by chance, it's just a random thing that the mind is just randomly experiencing frustration or agitation or stress or something like that. Or incapable of resorting to the view that pleasure and pain are not made by another, but have arisen by accident or chance. The same thing, right? Incapable of resorting to the view that pleasure and pain are made neither by oneself nor by another, but have arisen by chance, right? So these would be things that you would be incapable of resorting to these views because you would have independently verified that the natural law of karma, of cause and effect, and you would have seen dependent origination, and you would have independently verified that, and you know that it's craving, desire, attachment leading back to ignorance that is actually causing all of this. And that's why you'd be incapable of resorting to any of these views. So let me know what questions you guys have here, if any at all. Okay, I don't see any questions. So let's go to chapter 28. This is now moving into the next part of the book. This is the Eightfold Path, and you guys know when we get to the chapter of the Eightfold Path, what I usually do is just open up to see are there any questions you have on the Eightfold Path? Because this is going to come up multiple times through our book series, but it takes me 2.5 hours to teach this entire teaching. So I just kind of pause and see if you guys have any questions, because you might be actually working with the Eightfold Path and putting that together and kind of encountering some challenges. So let me know if you guys have any questions on the Eightfold Path and understanding it intellectually, or how to reflect on it to verify it, or how to practice it. Okay, I don't see any questions. One thing I would like to point out, if you guys aren't actively reading these books, of course, I encourage you guys to do that. But one of the things that I have here in these books that I don't have in the first volume is I explain the jhanas and what you'll experience when you're in the jhanas. If you're putting together the Eightfold Path really well, eventually you're going to be experiencing these enhanced qualities of mind, which is the jhanas. And at that point, your practice needs to pivot, and you need to start focusing on the 10 fetters more closely. The Eightfold Path is generally training the mind to eliminate the 10 fetters, but when you get into the jhanas, you need to start targeting them one by one with very specific tools and techniques to be able to eliminate them. So knowing that you're in the jhanas is actually very important and very helpful, because now you can really start targeting the individual fetters and make your way to enlightenment. So if you haven't read this to understand what the jhanas are and how to know that you're in the jhanas, this would be helpful. I'm teaching a class all next week at the temple, which is called Experiencing the Jhanas and the 4 Stages of Enlightenment, where I'm going to be helping people understand the jhanas and the 4 stages. So I teach that I teach it twice a year. So you might be interested in watching those recordings or attending the classes live, because if you've been practicing for a certain period of time and you've been developing your mind, you may be experiencing the jhanas and be ready to even move beyond that. So this is something for you to be able to read if you're not already reading these regularly as you go through week by week. And now let's get down to the next chapter, which is chapter 29. Is there someone who would like to read this? Okay, Yihang, go ahead, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, Teacher David. I actually also have a question regarding the right speech.
Sure.
May I?
Mm-hmm.
There was a situation that I had a conversation with a friend, and she was saying that she's happy to see there is a teacher called Sadhguru from India. I'm not sure if you're aware of, but anyway, she said she wants to attend that activities that teacher Sadhguru is holding, because she saw that, or she thinks he's the one who is enlightened because he himself said that. And then at that moment, the mind, like my mind was thinking, I want to say, it's clear that he's not enlightened because of his saying that. Is that, if I said that, is that a slander?
If they're asking you a question, I wouldn't. So they didn't ask you a question. If you just said that, this would be giving unsolicited guidance. So it would be unwise for you to say it. And yes, it would be considered slander because you're talking about that person directly. But what you can do is, let's just say she said to you, "Hey, Yihang, I'm thinking of going to see this person, Sadhguru, and he says he's enlightened, and that's why I would like to go see him, and I'd like to learn from him." And instead of you saying, since Sadhguru says that he's enlightened, that means he can't be enlightened. Instead, you can say, based on what I have learned, I can't speak about Sadhguru and what he may or may not be experiencing, but everything that I've learned is that someone who claims to be enlightened means that they're not enlightened because they're still being boastful and arrogant and prideful. So if she's asking you the question, you can share it that way by just talking about what you've learned about what it means to share that you're enlightened without talking about that person directly.
Okay. Thank you, Teacher David.
Yeah, if you don't use a person's name or you don't reference a particular organization or company or something like that, you can't slander that individual because you're not referencing them. So that's why you can talk generally about what you know as teachings versus about that person specifically.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And also if they never ever ask questions in a conversation? Would that be wise that maybe I keep myself quiet?
You can offer guidance, but you need to be able to be skillful with that. Like if someone says, "Oh, I'm so excited, I'm going to see this teacher who claims that they're enlightened," da 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 da. You can say, "Well, are you interested in my thoughts on that? Or would you like my opinion on that?" You can ask them that, and they're either going to say yes or no. And you've got to be prepared for them saying no sometimes because of impermanence. They're not going to always say yes. And just because they say no, it doesn't mean they don't respect you or they don't care about you or they don't think you're an intelligent person. It just means that in that situation, they're saying no. So you could offer advice, and the Buddha teaches that if you have someone who's close to you that you think will heed your advice, you can do these kinds of things, but you need to do it skillfully, where you first ask if they're open to your suggestions. And now, even if they say yes, what do you have to say, Young? And you start sharing, sometimes you're 15, 30 seconds into sharing, and their ego or their craving can rise up, and they can become very angry. Because if they're craving to go to this event and you're giving them evidence to show that it's unwise to go, now their craving isn't getting fulfilled. So they can get angry and they can attribute that anger to you. And if you notice that, it would be wise for you to back away from the conversation in terms of, changing the subject or moving to something else, because a person's craving and anger can arise or their ego can arise. So just because they say yes, that they would like to hear what you have to say, doesn't mean that they're truly interested in hearing what you have to say. They might say yes, but when you start talking, you can see that clearly they're not interested in what it is you have to say, and it's best for you to just change the subject and move on to something else.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yep.
How a stream enterer is called. Monks, when a noble disciple thus understands as they really are the cause and the passing away of the world, he is then called a noble disciple who is accomplished in view, who is accomplished in vision, who has arrived at three true teachings, who sees these true teachings, who possesses a Chinese wisdom, who possesses a Chinese true wisdom, who has entered the stream of the teachings, a noble one with penetrative wisdom, one who stands squarely before the door to the deathless enlightenment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Yihang. So for someone who understands as they really are the causes in the passing away of the world, this is dependent origination. That's the cause in the passing away of the world. How do beings come into the world and how do they pass away out of the world? How is this cycle of rebirth really truly happening? It's dependent origination. So a noble disciple is someone who's studying closely and someone who understands dependent origination. Then they're called a noble disciple. They're a stream enterer. There are other things that they would need besides just that. It's not just learning dependent origination that's going to get you to the first stage of enlightenment, but that's one of the key things. And now that's where the Buddha says, okay, this person is accomplished in view. They're standing squarely before the door to the deathless, right? This is essentially what I shared about you've made your way to base camp of Mount Everest, right? You're standing at the base of the mountain, ready to get to the summit, right? So you're standing at the door. You haven't entered into the door, but you're ready, right? And that's what the Buddha is explaining, that by the time you've penetrated into dependent origination, all these other teachings that you've been collecting up, they will be really gelling in your mind at that point, and you will have really worked to be able to cultivate that wisdom to independently verify dependent origination. So right now, even though we studied it last week, don't put the expectation on yourself that you should already know it today, right? It's going to take you time to be able to cultivate the understanding of dependent origination and get to the point where you're, aha, I got it. I understand what this is communicating to me, and I've been able to independently verify this. So if you need time for that, then take your time. There's no rush. You're on your own journey. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. Okay, I don't see any questions here. So let's go to our last chapter today, which is chapter 30. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, Kristen, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, teacher. The 10 fetters. Monks, there are these 10 fetters. What 10? The 5 lower fetters and the 5 higher fetters. And what are the 5 lower fetters? 1. Personal existence view. 2. Doubt. 3. Wrong behavior and observances. 4. Sensual desire. And 5. Ill will. These are the 5 lower fetters. And what are the 5 higher fetters? 6. Desire for form. 7. Desire for formless. 8. Conceit. 9. Restlessness. And 10. Ignorance. These are the 5 higher fetters. These monks are the 10 fetters.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. So you guys have probably heard me talk about the fetters plenty of times, but I'll just kind of, for some people who maybe haven't heard me speak about these before, I'll kind of review some of the basic stuff, and then we'll go into talking about them. So the 10 fetters are the 10 individual pollutions that are in the mind. These are the very deepest level of detail that the Buddha gives you on the pollutions of the mind. And you need to uproot these and eliminate them out of the mind in order to be able to get to enlightenment. All of his teachings, in one way or another, are guiding you to uproot these individual pollutions out of the mind. He refers to them as fetters because during his lifetime, if you were somebody that they were trying to keep confined to a certain area, like a prisoner, they would attach a fetter around your ankle, which was a shackle and a chain and a ball, and then they would just keep you out in a field, and now you would be confined to that area. Where today we put those types of individuals in jail cells or prison cells, where during the lifetime of the Buddha, they attached a fetter to your ankle, which is a shackle and a chain and a ball. So when the Buddha discovers these 10 pollutions, he calls them fetters because it's keeping the mind trapped in this unenlightened state, continuing to experience anger and sadness and frustration over and over and over again. But just like a prisoner, if you release that shackle off of their ankle, they're now free. They're liberated. The same thing is true about your mind. When you eliminate these fetters out of the mind is now free. Because when you're experiencing anger and sadness and stress and frustration and embarrassment and disappointment and all these other feelings, your mind is not free. It's bound up. And it's bound up with these fetters. So what you're doing on the path to enlightenment, whether it's the Eightfold Path, whether it's the 5 precepts, whether it's the meditation training, any other aspect of his teachings, it's all helping you to eliminate these 10 fetters in one way or another. And you might not know what that is exactly 100% as you're first getting started, but just understand that that's what it is, that this is the engine underneath of what's driving all of your discontentedness. And it's the ignorance or the unknowing of true reality, the lack of wisdom of these, that keeps the mind stuck in that continuous state. So as you cultivate wisdom about what these are and you work to eliminate them, that's where more and more of the peace and joy comes in. That's where the concentration and focus is coming in, because you're uprooting these pollutions out of the mind. So I teach each one of these in various courses and retreats that I share. I actually spend an hour to an hour and a half on each individual one of these fetters at different times. So we can talk about any of these that you guys would like, that you need more help on or to understand. But to go through each one of them in detail, like I mentioned, I usually spend about an hour to an hour and a half where I explain what it is, I explain the symptoms of it, I explain how to eliminate it, and how to know that you've actually eliminated it, because that's an important piece to it as well. The way that you might think about this is you might think about it as a personal growth plan, right? It's not something for you to wave around and prove to everybody else that you've eliminated these fetters. It's more of like plotting your steps of how you're going to move forward on the path to enlightenment, because initially you're just working on getting the Eightfold Path well underway, which includes meditation and your moral conduct and all those other things. But as you get into those jhanas, you start pivoting and you start focusing on these 10 fetters individually. And you would need to eliminate one before you eliminate the other. Doesn't mean you can't work on the others. Like even right now, this conceit, which is a higher fetter, it's the 8th fetter. You could be working on that right now, because that's the arrogance and the pride, the measuring and comparing, putting yourself above people and below people. Wherever you see your mind's doing that, you'd like to cut that off and let it go. You'd like to be able to sleep on the floor on a very low position, right? Put a mattress on the floor. That's going to help you to eliminate that conceit. And there's other things like that you can do to proactively eliminate conceit, but also to eliminate it in the moment too. So you can be working on that now. There's no harm in you doing that. But for example, you wouldn't be able to eliminate your conceit without having first eliminated personal existence view. So the Buddha puts these in an order for a reason, because you need to work on them in this order, because one needs to be eliminated before the other. So in order to eliminate sensual desire and ill will, for example, you would need to first eliminate wrong behavior and observances. That's something that you would need to eliminate. You wouldn't be able to just eliminate your sensual desire and ill will and still have this wrong behavior. It doesn't work that way. So this is like a personal growth plan, kind of a way for you to plot your steps forward. Once you've got your arms around the Eightfold Path and you're practicing that closely, now you start focusing on these more closely, even though you've been working on all of them through the Eightfold Path, generally training your mind, kind of having a wide brush, a wide paintbrush. Now, when you're in the jhanas, you start going in and almost with a scalpel or a very small, fine paintbrush, and now you're looking to get rid of each one of these individually. So if you have questions on any of them individually, let me know, and I will help you to understand what they are. So it looks like Vibhav has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Teacher David. I think you and I were discussing when you were here, and we were talking about like wrong livelihood, and not having. If you were, like, for my example, if I'm working in IT and I'm not, or tech, and I'm not, that's not the right livelihood for me. I could still be working on the other fetters and possibly eliminating them, and then as and when the livelihood changes or becomes the right livelihood, basically there may be a possibility of going just from say the first stage of enlightenment, or I guess not even the first stage of enlightenment, I guess from getting in from maybe the jhanas to other stages of enlightenment, because I maybe have skipped, or I've already have eliminated some of the other fetters. Do you remember that conversation?
Yes.
And so I was wondering that when you just said that these fetters are in order, and you have to eliminate one before you fully eliminate the other. And I was wondering how those two things kind of link. So if one has not purified their livelihood, that means they can not even get into the first stage of enlightenment, the first fold.
Right.
Then that means they would not be able to even eliminate the other fetters, right?
They would be able to work on reducing them, but not eliminating them. That's what I explained to you. That's the part you're missing, is that I shared that, okay, if someone's in the fourth jhana, but they're still practicing a wrong livelihood, meaning they're pursuing gain with gain, they could still be working on reducing sensual desire and ill will, and even the higher fetters. They can be working on reducing those, but they wouldn't be completely eliminated until you've actually eliminated your wrong behavior. Because the whole thing that's keeping the mind in that pursuing gain with gain is its wrong behavior and its sensual desire. That's what's doing it, and potentially even conceit as well. And of course, there's always ignorance. So you can't completely eliminate sensual desire and ill will without having first eliminated wrong behavior. Does that make sense for you?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the piece you're missing, is that I mentioned that you can reduce, but I didn't say you can eliminate these other fetters while still being in a wrong livelihood. It's not possible.
Do you remember also saying that you could possibly just go from like the fourth jhana to this, maybe the second stage of enlightenment?
Yeah, that's possible. So if somebody was in the fourth jhana and they were, the only thing that was keeping them there was that they're pursuing gain with gain, right? Now, when they eliminate that and they're no longer pursuing gain with gain, and they move to a right livelihood where they are now have purified to the first fold of purification, they could essentially be going from the fourth jhana right into the second stage of enlightenment.
Okay. So I guess what just to recap what you're saying, so they would have eliminated. So in the four jhanas, they're not following the right livelihood.
Mm-hmm.
They would have not eliminated sensual desire. They not have eliminated wrong behavior and observances because they don't have a fully purified moral conduct.
Right.
And would have eliminated sensual desire as well.
They wouldn't have eliminated sensual desire by then. But the second stage of enlightenment, you're not eliminating sensual desire. It's just been reduced.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But they would have eliminated personal existence, view, and doubt.
Potentially, in our example that we're sharing, yeah.
Yeah, so basically, what could happen is that because they've eliminated personal existence, view, and doubt, and once they purify their right livelihood and they're practicing all the other moral conduct, they've eliminated wrong behavior and observances, so they could potentially just go through to the second stage of enlightenment.
Right.
And if they had already eliminated ill will, and the only thing that the essential desire was, or eliminating sensual desire, keeping them from eliminating the essential desire was their wrong livelihood, they could potentially even go to the third stage of enlightenment because they've eliminated, once they purify their livelihood, they would have eliminated wrong behavior and observances, sensual desire, and ill will.
That would be an extremely, 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 extremely rare situation, but it is possible.
Okay, just kind of clarify. Thank you.
Yeah. Because if someone has enough sensual desire to keep them in a livelihood with wrong behavior, there's going to be other sensual desires too. There's not going to be just that one little sensual desire holding on. There's going to be others. And if there's sensual desire in the mind, there's going to be ill will as well.
Right, but you also said, I think last week we discussed is that I believe that if you eliminate sensual desire, then these go together.
Yeah, they go together.
Mm-hmm. If you eliminated sensual desire, then you've eliminated ill will as well.
But you can still have some lingering ill will in your mind, even though the central desire, the mind's no longer longing, yearning. There can still be, this ill will. These are two separate fetters.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you're saying that ill will can still be there in the mind, even though sensual desire is.
Yeah, it's residual. It's just a residual bit. I mean, it's not like, fierce hostility. It's not like you're plotting and planning to light someone's house on fire or anything like that, right? It's just like very, very minimal stuff.
Okay, so these could go together, or they could still be some lingering ill will, even if sensual desire.
Yeah, there can just be some lingering residual ill will. That's where the loving kindness meditation and practicing loving kindness in day-to-day life is going to help you to target that.
Okay, thank you. This really helps.
Sure. Okay, it looks like Calvin has a question. Calvin is saying, Teacher, why is the fetter categorized into higher and lower? Because it helps you to understand how to progress on the path. Like I mentioned, that you wouldn't be able to eliminate conceit, for example, if you hadn't eliminated personal existence view. So you really focus on the lower fetters first, even though you can be working like proactively. Like right now, if you started sleeping on the floor with a mattress on the floor, you're working on eliminating conceit. Right? And right now, you're actually working on eliminating ignorance too by cultivation of wisdom, right? So by having them as the higher and lower fetters, it helps you to prioritize. What is it that I really need to be focused on here? So it's giving you that personal growth plan. Okay, I think Calvin might have asked another question. Oh, thank you. You're welcome. Okay. All right. It looks like Kristen might have a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, teacher. I have a question. It's about last week I didn't make it to class, but I did read the chapters and then listened, and just had a question about how the interlocking steps with when it comes to the consciousness finding name and form. So I understand. So at death, if we still have craving, ignorance in the mind, then and the volitional formations, whether it's like through speech or body or mind, then those two things create a consciousness. Is that right? And then from there, that consciousness needs to find a body, name, and form. So it's something for it to sort of. So the question then is, who determines, or how does it get determined, like what body you end up being born into, or the existence of that next, or that consciousness? Like who determines that? Like, I know when I was reading a little bit about the being in the first stage of enlightenment, like you may be born into like a good family twice, something along those lines. So, but if you're not in that first stage of enlightenment, how do you know where you're going to go? Whether it's, I guess it's the question.
Sure. So it's all cause and effect. There's no being who's determining. So you're asking like who determines? If we would like to answer that question, it's you. It's your decisions that determine where you're going to be reborn. You're not specifically saying, I want to be reborn in the animal realm. That's not what it is, or I want to be reborn in this specific family. But whatever the state of your mind is at the time of death, that's what determines what's going to happen next. So there's this cause and effect. So if there's craving, that means there's ignorance in the mind. And now with this ignorance and craving, that means there's going to be rebirth. And the amount of ignorance and the amount of craving is going to determine which realm you're born into, right? So if you have extensive amounts of ignorance, extensive amounts of craving, extensive amounts of anger, it's the hell realm, right? And if there's a fair amount of ignorance, craving, and anger, it's going to be the animal realm. And then there's a lesser version is going to be in afflicted spirits. But if you've purified your mind to a certain degree, you could come back to the human realm, or you could be reborn into the heavenly realm. Now, sometimes people like to think that there's just one door to get in. So the Buddha explains that if you're in the first stage of enlightenment, that you can be reborn into the human realm. And if you're in the third stage of enlightenment, that you're going to be reborn into the heavenly realm. But that's not the only door. You could actually not be in the first stage of enlightenment, or not be in the third stage of enlightenment. And you could actually still be reborn into the human realm again. And you could actually still even be reborn in the heavenly realm, right? You can even go from the hell realm straight up to the heavenly realm. It's very rare, but it's possible. The Buddha talks about this. You can go from the heavenly realm down into the hell realm. These beings are being reborn all throughout these different places. So sometimes people think that there's only one door, which is getting to the first stage of enlightenment, and that's the way to get back to the human realm. But actually, even someone who's not in that, you'll see in the words of the Buddha, where he even talks about someone in the jhanas can be reborn into the human world, even can be reborn into the heavenly world, and even someone who's not in the jhanas can also be reborn into the human realm or the heavenly realm, because it's the quality of your mind and the state of the pollution of the mind at the time of death. So there's this cause and effect relationship that is producing this. So it's your decisions that are leading to whatever result you experience.
Okay, and will I then also get to choose? Say I'm going to come back into the human realm. Do I get to choose the body?
It's not that specific.
Okay.
It's
So
a natural.
sort of
It's a natural law, right?
Okay.
So like this phone with the natural law of gravity, I'm not determining what rate it drops at. I'm not determining, its trajectory through the air and all these other things. There's forces of the natural law of gravity that's determining that stuff. All I'm deciding is to let go, right? And now there's a natural law that governs that. So it's the same thing, is that you're deciding to either purify your mind or not. And now at this time of death, this natural law is going to function automatically. And now based on the quality of your mind, there's going to be a certain effect or a certain result. And you're not choosing the specific family or anything like that. If you die in a certain region of the world, you will tend to be reborn back into that same region of the world. Not always, but generally that's what happens, because this natural law is not exact, right? It's not an exact thing that it says like, it's always going to happen this way and it's never going to happen that way. That's not the way that this natural law functions. So there's things like this that I can share with you that you'll see through the teachings of the Buddha, that he shares that, if you die in a certain region of the world, you're going to generally be reborn in that same region of the world and things like this. But there are also cases where someone dies in one region of the world and they're reborn in another region of the world. It can happen. It is possible. So we can describe these kinds of things and you can start to understand it. But you're also going to see when we get to volume 6 is all about the natural law of karma. Even though the whole book series is really about the natural law of karma, volume 6 really goes in and targets the natural law of karma. You'll see a certain chapter where the Buddha says, if you try to discern the exact result of karma, it would lead to your madness or frustration. So when we talk about the natural law of karma, we can talk generally about these types of things. Like if someone said, hey, David, if I cheated on my wife, what's going to happen based on the natural law of karma? Well, I can say, well, you're probably going to experience fights, arguments, potentially sexually transmitted diseases. You could end up getting a divorce. You could lose your reputation in the community, so forth and so on, right? These are all possibilities. But in terms of like the exact result, that's where the Buddha says if you tried to determine that, it would lead to madness or frustration, because the way that any one particular decision affects each individual being is going to be unique to that each individual being. And you'll see this when we talk about the natural law of karma in the next volume, how the Buddha talks about this lump of salt and how it affects different people in different ways.
Okay. All right, thank you, teacher. And then one last question. Ted had a question. Did Bailan eat those 9 eggs?
He did.
He did.
And he showed it to me and he made sure that I saw it. And then the next day I saw his mom and I said, did you know that he eats 9 eggs now? She said, yeah, I know. I went looking for it because I was going to eat part of it, and he had already eaten it all. And then there's this other dish you guys might know, kaijio. It's like an egg omelet. And I said, he told me that he eats 6 eggs whenever he makes that. And she said, yeah, that's what he's eating now. And I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea he was eating so much. Because I out of both of us, I eat with him more than she does. But somehow she found out that he eats this amazing amount of food more, quicker than I did. And I don't know how that happened. It doesn't matter to me. But this boy's eating some food.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, teacher.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. So let me see if we have any questions anywhere else. And by the way, he edits this podcast, so he's probably going to hear this, or he will hear this. All right. I don't see any questions anywhere else. So, all right. Well, what I'll do then is just end by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest to learn and understand the teachings of the Buddha. Next week, we're going to be in the next 10 chapters. So you might decide that you'd like to study those before class and or after class. Tomorrow in our group learning program, we're going to be in chapter 19 of volume 1. This is titled The Difficult Human Existence, Sickness, Aging, and Death. This is where I teach about the life story of the Buddha and these 3 challenges that you'll experience, which is sickness, aging, and death, in helping you to understand how to deal with these situations. And then, like I mentioned, all next week, I'm teaching experiencing the 4 jhanas in the 4 stages of enlightenment, that particular course. So you're welcome to attend any of that you'd like as well. So thank you all so much, and perhaps I'll see you guys in a future class. Be well and take care. Sawadee-ka.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.